The DNA sample sits under the electron microscope, a fragment of genetic code that has confounded scientists for generations. In a laboratory at the University of the Basque Country in Bilbao, geneticist Dr. Helena Sánchez stares at the results displayed on her monitor, her brow furrowed in concentration. The markers do not align with any of the expected patterns from surrounding European populations. They tell a story that defies conventional wisdom about European migration and settlement. A story that begins thousands of years before recorded history. This cannot be right, Helena mutters, running the analysis again. But the results remain unchanged. The Basque people, who inhabit a region straddling the border between Spain and France along the Western Pyrenees and the Bay of Biscay, represent one of the most enigmatic populations in Europe. Their language, Euskera, stands as a linguistic isolate with no known relatives, unconnected to the Indo-European language family that dominates the continent. Their genetic profile has perplexed researchers for decades, suggesting an origin story distinctly different from their neighbors. But what exactly does this genetic evidence reveal? And why has it proven so difficult to decipher? The mystery extends beyond academia. For the Basque people themselves, these questions touch on identity, heritage, and belonging. Are they truly the direct descendants of Europe's original inhabitants? What secrets does their DNA harbor about human migration and survival through millennia of change? Helena picks up her phone and dials. Danielle? I need you to see this. The markers we identified. They are showing patterns that predate the Neolithic farmers. Far older than we expected. This is not merely a story about genetic anomalies. It is about unraveling one of the most persistent mysteries in European prehistory, a scientific detective story spanning thousands of years, and a quest to understand who we are and where we come from. The mystery of Basque DNA provides a unique window into human evolution, migration, and survival. It challenges us to reconsider what we thought we knew about European prehistory and the very foundations of human identity. And it all begins with a people who have maintained their distinctive cultural and genetic signature despite thousands of years of change all around them. Long before genetic sequencing, before blood typing, before modern anthropology, the Basque people recognized their uniqueness. As early as the 16th century, they developed laws of blood purity to maintain their distinct identity, not out of racism, but from a profound sense of cultural uniqueness. They somehow knew, generations before science could confirm it, that there was something different in their lineage. Now, in the 21st century, we have the tools to examine that difference at the molecular level. And what we are discovering is rewriting the story of European settlement and challenging assumptions about human migration that have stood for decades. The mountains of the Basque Country rise sharply from the coast of the Bay of Biscay, creating natural barriers that have historically isolated the region from surrounding territories. These geographical features have played a crucial role in preserving both the Basque culture and their genetic heritage. But isolation alone cannot explain the depth of their uniqueness. Something more fundamental lies at the heart of the Basque story, a genetic signature that has persisted through ice ages, invasions, empires, and revolutions. In 1952, anthropologist José Miguel de Barandiarán discovered prehistoric cave paintings at Santa Mamín, providing evidence of continuous human habitation in the Basque region dating back at least 14,000 years. This finding sparked interest in the possibility that Basque people might be direct descendants of Upper Paleolithic Europeans, the Cro-Magnon people who created these ancient artworks. The discovery was just the beginning. In the decades that followed, geneticists, linguists, and archaeologists would converge on the Basque Country, each bringing different methodologies and perspectives to bear on the central question. Who are the Basque people, and why are they so distinct from other Europeans? The first major genetic studies of the Basque population in the 1970s focused on blood types and revealed a startling pattern. Basques have the highest rate of Rh-negative blood in the world, with approximately 30 to 35% of the population carrying this factor, compared to an average of 15% across most European populations. This was more than just a statistical anomaly. The distribution of blood types serves as a genetic marker, a signpost pointing toward historical population movements and isolation. The distinctive blood type pattern suggested that the Basques represented a population that had remained relatively unchanged since prehistoric times. But blood typing was just the beginning. As genetic science advanced, researchers gained access to more sophisticated tools that could explore deeper connections and more ancient lineages. By the 1990s, mitochondrial DNA and Y chromosome studies began to paint a more detailed picture of Basque genetic heritage. In 1991, geneticist Luigi Luca Cavalli Sforza published The History and Geography of Human Genes, which included comprehensive analysis of genetic variation across European populations. His work placed the Basques as genetic outliers, suggesting they represented a population descended directly from Upper Paleolithic Europeans who had inhabited the continent before the arrival of Neolithic farmers from the Middle East around 7,500 years ago. This hypothesis, that the Basques were living representatives of Europe's original inhabitants, captured public imagination and scientific interest alike. It suggested that while most modern Europeans represent a genetic mixture of these original hunter-gatherers and the later arriving farmers, the Basques had somehow maintained a more direct line of descent from the hunter-gatherers. But science seldom offers simple answers to complex questions, and as genetic analysis techniques advanced further, the picture became more nuanced and, in some ways, more puzzling. In a sun-drenched office at Stanford University in 2003, Dr. Harlan Stein reviews the latest genetic data from Basque samples. His team has been comparing Y chromosome lineages across European populations, looking for patterns that might reveal ancient migrations and settlements. "Look at this," he says to his colleague, pointing at a chart displaying genetic marker frequencies. The R1b haplogroup is present in extremely high frequencies among Basques, over 85% in some communities. That's higher than anywhere else in Europe. His colleague leans forward, studying the data. But R1b is common throughout Western Europe. How does this make Basques unique? It's not just the presence of R1b, Harlan explains. It's the specific subclades and their frequencies. The Basque pattern suggests they've maintained these lineages with minimal admixture for thousands of years. It's like finding a genetic time capsule. This finding represented just one piece of a complex puzzle. Y chromosome studies trace paternal lineages, while mitochondrial DNA analysis follows maternal lines. Together, they began to suggest that Basque genetic distinctiveness was real and significant, but not quite as straightforward as the direct descendants of Paleolithic Europeans narrative initially suggested. By the early 2000s, genetic science entered a new era with the development of genome-wide association studies and, eventually, whole genome sequencing. These technologies allowed researchers to examine hundreds of thousands of genetic markers simultaneously, providing unprecedented insight into population histories and relationships. In 2010, a groundbreaking study published in Nature analyzed nearly 600,000 genetic markers from individuals representing 51 different populations worldwide. The results confirmed the Basques' genetic distinctiveness but added new layers of complexity to their origin story. The data revealed that while Basques did indeed retain a higher proportion of hunter-gatherer ancestry than most European populations, they also carried genetic signatures of the Neolithic farmers who spread agriculture across Europe beginning around 7,500 years ago. This finding challenged the simplistic view of Basques as pure descendants of Paleolithic Europeans. However, the Basque genetic profile still stood apart in significant ways. Most notably, they showed almost no evidence of genetic admixture with the Yamnaya people, steppe pastoralists who expanded into Europe from the east around 4,500 years ago and contributed significantly to the genetic makeup of most modern Europeans. This absence of steppe ancestry became a crucial piece of the puzzle. It suggested that the Basques had already become genetically isolated by the time the Yamnaya influence spread across Europe. But why? And how had they maintained this isolation through thousands of years of turbulent European history? The mountains provided part of the answer. The Basque country's rugged terrain created natural barriers to extensive interaction with surrounding populations. But geography alone cannot explain such persistent genetic distinctiveness. Cultural and linguistic factors must also have played crucial roles. The Basque language, Euskera, stands as one of the most distinctive features of Basque identity. Unlike every other language in Western Europe, Euskera is not Indo-European. It has no known relatives among living languages, making it what linguists call a language isolate. In the oak-paneled linguistics department at Oxford University in 2012, Professor Diana Fletcher prepares for her lecture on European language families. Maps showing the distribution of Indo-European languages cover the wall behind her desk. One small area along the Franco-Spanish border is circled in red, the Basque-speaking region. The persistence of euskera defies linguistic expectations. Diana explains to a visiting colleague, languages don't usually survive in isolation. They influence and are influenced by neighboring languages, or they eventually die out. But euskera has maintained its fundamental structure for thousands of years despite being surrounded by Romance languages. Could it be a remnant of a pre-Indo-European language family that was once widespread? Her colleague asks. Diana nods. That's the leading hypothesis. Euskera may be the last survivor of the languages spoken across Europe before the arrival of Indo-European speakers. If so, it represents a living linguistic fossil, perhaps the only window we have into how Europe's first modern human inhabitants communicated. The linguistic isolation of the Basques parallels their genetic distinctiveness and raises similar questions. Did the Basque language diverge from other European languages, or did other European languages diverge from a Basque-like substrate? Was euskera once part of a larger language family that has otherwise disappeared? Could studying euskera provide insights into the languages spoken by Europe's earliest modern human inhabitants? These questions highlight the interdisciplinary nature of research into Basque origins. Genetics, linguistics, archaeology, and history must all contribute pieces to this complex puzzle. The archaeological record provides another crucial dimension. Excavations throughout the Basque Country have uncovered evidence of continuous human habitation dating back to the Upper Paleolithic period, roughly 35,000 years ago. Cave sites like Santamamine, Icane, and Altseri contain remarkable rock art from this period, suggesting cultural continuity in the region. In 2015, archaeologists discovered a series of handprints at Atsura Cave that were carbon-dated to approximately 14,500 years ago. The red ochre paintings depicted bison, horses, and goats alongside these human handprints, creating a tangible connection to the people who lived in the region during the last ice age. The archaeological evidence suggests that the Basque region served as a refuge during the last glacial maximum, the period of maximum extent of ice sheets approximately 22,000 years ago. While much of northern Europe was covered by ice and largely uninhabitable, the Basque country's milder Atlantic climate made it one of several refugia where human populations could survive. This concept of refugia proved crucial to understanding Basque genetic distinctiveness. If the Basque ancestors had been isolated in this glacial refuge, they may have developed genetic and linguistic characteristics that differentiated them from other European populations even before the major migration waves of the Neolithic period and the Bronze Age. As genetic science advanced into the era of ancient DNA analysis, researchers gained the ability to directly compare modern populations with the DNA extracted from prehistoric human remains. This breakthrough technology promised to resolve many of the long-standing questions about Basque origins. In 2016, a landmark study published in Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences analyzed DNA from 8 Stone Age skeletons found in El Portolán Cave in Atapuerca, northern Spain. The remains dated from 3,500 to 5,500 years ago, providing a crucial window into the genetic makeup of Iberian populations before and after the arrival of steppe pastoralists. The results were revelatory. The early Iberian farmers showed a genetic profile similar to modern Basques, lacking the steppe ancestry that later became common throughout Europe. This suggested that rather than being direct descendants of Paleolithic hunter-gatherers, modern Basques more closely resembled the Neolithic farmers who brought agriculture to the Iberian Peninsula, but without the later admixture with steppe populations that affected most other Europeans. This finding required a significant recalibration of the narrative surrounding Basque origins. Rather than representing a pure Paleolithic European population, Basques appeared to be more like a genetic snapshot of Neolithic Iberia, preserved through subsequent millennia of relative isolation. Yet even as this new understanding emerged, further complications arose. Additional ancient DNA studies revealed that the picture was even more complex than previously thought. In 2018, a comprehensive study published in Science analyzed 271 ancient Iberian genomes spanning more than 8,000 years. The results showed that the genetic composition of the Iberian Peninsula had undergone several major transformations over millennia. During the Copper Age, approximately 5,000 to 4,000 years ago, North African ancestry appeared in southern Iberia. Later, during the Bronze Age, migrants from the steppe introduced new genetic lineages throughout much of the peninsula. Yet through these waves of migration and admixture, the ancestors of modern Basques remained relatively unchanged. They had incorporated the genetic influence of Neolithic farmers, but somehow resisted the later transformations that affected their neighbors. The question was no longer just, where did the Basques come from? But, how did they maintain their genetic distinctiveness through millennia of change? The answers appear to lie in a complex interplay of geography, culture, language, and perhaps even ancient social structures that prioritized endogamy marriage within the community. The mountainous terrain of the Basque country certainly contributed to their isolation, but cultural factors must also have played a crucial role. Basque social organization historically centered around the Baseri, or farmstead, with strong emphasis on family lineage and land ownership. Traditional Basque inheritance customs typically passed property intact to a single heir, male or female, with other siblings either remaining unmarried on the family farm or marrying into other Baseri. This system may have contributed to genetic continuity within the population. The unique Basque language would also have served as a powerful barrier to integration with neighboring populations. Linguistic isolation often leads to social isolation, as language represents not just a means of communication but a vehicle for cultural transmission and group identity. In 2020, the most comprehensive analysis of Basque DNA to date was published in Current Biology. The study examined whole genome sequences from 190 individuals from the Basque country and compared them with both modern and ancient DNA samples from throughout Europe. The results confirmed the Basques' genetic uniqueness but provided a more nuanced picture of their origins. Modern Basques derived approximately 70 to 80% of their ancestry from Neolithic farmers, with the remainder coming from Western European hunter-gatherers. Crucially, they showed almost no evidence of the steppe ancestry that arrived in Iberia around 4,000 years ago and eventually contributed 15 to 25% of the genetic makeup of most other Iberian populations. This pattern suggested that the Basques had already become genetically isolated by the early Bronze Age, effectively freezing their genetic profile at a point representing the admixture that had occurred between Neolithic farmers and the hunter-gatherers they encountered when they arrived in Western Europe. The study also identified specific genetic variants that occur at unusually high frequencies in the Basque population. These included variants associated with blood type, hemochromatosis, a disorder affecting iron absorption, and certain immune functions. Some of these variants may have conferred adaptive advantages in the specific environmental conditions of the Basque region, potentially contributing to the population's resilience through periods of climate change, disease, and social upheaval. In a modern laboratory in San Sebastian in 2022, Helena Sánchez carefully extracts DNA from a tooth found in a Neolithic burial site near Guernica. The remains date to approximately 6,000 years ago, representing one of the earliest farming communities in the region. After weeks of painstaking work to prevent contamination, her team successfully sequences enough DNA to compare with modern Basque individuals. The similarity is remarkable, Helena tells her colleague Danielle Flores over video call. This individual from 6,000 years ago shares more genetic markers with modern Basques than with any other contemporary European population. It's as if time stood still genetically in this region. Danielle's expertise in population genetics provides context for the finding. What we're seeing is consistent with a population that experienced early admixture between hunter-gatherers and Neolithic farmers, then became isolated before the later Bronze Age migrations. But the degree of continuity is still surprising. Most European regions show much more genetic turnover during the same time frame. The question is why, Helena responds. What factors kept the Basque population so stable when the rest of Europe was experiencing wave after wave of migration and admixture? This question lies at the heart of the ongoing research into Basque origins. The genetic data provides a clear picture of what happened, genetic isolation beginning approximately 4,500 to 4,000 years ago, but explaining why and how this isolation was maintained requires input from multiple disciplines. One intriguing hypothesis involves the spread of lactase persistence, the genetic adaptation that allows adults to digest milk throughout Europe. This adaptation was rare in early farming populations but became common with the arrival of steppe pastoralists, for whom dairy products were a dietary staple. Interestingly, modern Basques have lower frequencies of lactase persistence than surrounding populations, consistent with their limited genetic input from steppe sources. Could dietary differences have played a role in maintaining Basque genetic distinctiveness? If the ancestors of modern Basques relied less on dairy as a food source, this might have reduced the selective advantage of intermarriage with incoming pastoralist populations who carried the lactase persistence mutation. Language also likely played a crucial role in maintaining Basque genetic isolation. Unlike the Celtic and Iberian languages that were eventually displaced by Latin and later evolved into Romance languages, Euskera survived the Roman period and subsequent historical upheavals. Its unique structure, with no clear relationship to any other language, made it extraordinarily difficult for outsiders to learn, creating a natural barrier to integration. The preservation of Euskera through millennia of cultural pressure represents a remarkable achievement. Despite Roman conquest, Visigothic rule, the spread of Christianity, and the formation of modern nation-states, the Basque language endured. This linguistic continuity parallels the genetic continuity observed in the population and suggests strong cultural mechanisms for maintaining distinct identity. In 2021, a computational linguistics study used methods from evolutionary biology to estimate the age of the Basque language. By analyzing the rate of word replacement and structural changes in the different Basque dialects, researchers estimated that Proto-Euskera may have diverged from other European languages at least 7,000 years ago, roughly coinciding with the arrival of agriculture in the region. This timing is particularly significant when considered alongside the genetic evidence. It suggests that the unique Basque genetic profile and their language may share a common origin in the early Neolithic period, when farming communities were first becoming established in Western Europe. The genetic insights into Basque origins have broader implications for our understanding of European prehistory and human evolution. The Basque case demonstrates that population continuity can occur even amid large-scale demographic changes, challenging simplistic models of complete population replacement during major migration events. It also highlights the complex interplay between genetics, language, culture, and geography in shaping human populations. The factors that maintained Basque distinctiveness, mountainous terrain, linguistic uniqueness, cultural practices, created a natural laboratory for studying how human populations develop and change over time. The discovery of specific genetic adaptations in the Basque population provides insights into how humans have evolved in response to local environmental conditions and cultural practices. Some of these adaptations may have medical implications. For instance, the high frequency of certain blood type alleles in the Basque population has been associated with differences in susceptibility to certain diseases. In 2023, research using advanced genomic analysis techniques identified several genes under positive selection in the Basque population, including genes involved in immune function, metabolism, and skin pigmentation. These findings suggest that even as the Basques maintained genetic continuity, their genome continued to evolve in response to local selective pressures. One particularly interesting discovery involved genes related to facial structure. Certain genetic variants associated with distinctive facial features occur at higher frequencies in the Basque population, potentially explaining the observation made by early anthropologists that Basques often shared certain physical characteristics. While such claims were often exaggerated or filtered through biased perspectives in early studies, modern genetic analysis confirms that some phenotypic differences do have a genetic basis. The implications extend beyond the Basque country. By understanding how this population maintained its distinctiveness through millennia of European history, researchers gain insights into the processes that shape human diversity more broadly. The Basque case demonstrates that cultural factors can create effective barriers to genetic admixture even in the absence of geographical isolation. This understanding has relevance for interpreting genetic patterns in other populations around the world. Similar processes of cultural and linguistic isolation may have shaped genetic diversity in many regions, from the mountains of Papua New Guinea to the remote valleys of the Caucasus. For the Basque people themselves, genetic research has provided scientific validation for what they have long asserted through cultural memory and tradition, that they represent a unique and ancient European population. However, This research must be approached with sensitivity to how genetic findings can be interpreted and potentially misused in discussions of identity and belonging. The history of anthropological and genetic research on the Basques includes troubling episodes. During the early 20th century, some researchers approached Basque uniqueness through the lens of racial theories that sought to classify human populations hierarchically. These perspectives were scientifically unfounded and ethically problematic. Modern genetic research emphatically rejects such approaches. Contemporary studies recognize that genetic differences between human populations are relatively minor compared to the variation within populations. The genetic distinctiveness of the Basques represents an interesting historical phenomenon, not a marker of fundamental difference. Nevertheless, genetic findings can still be misinterpreted or misused in political contexts. In the Basque country, where questions of autonomy and identity remain politically charged, scientific claims about Basque origins must be presented with appropriate context and nuance. Scientists studying Basque genetics have increasingly recognized the importance of community engagement and ethical research practices. Many recent studies have involved collaboration with Basque researchers and institutions, ensuring that the communities being studied have input into how research is conducted and how results are interpreted and communicated. In 2024, a consortium of Basque and international researchers launched the Basque Genomic Heritage Project, an initiative designed to comprehensively map genetic variation throughout the Basque country while adhering to strict ethical guidelines. The project includes extensive community consultation and emphasizes the return of beneficial findings to participating communities. This approach represents a model for how genetic research on specific populations can be conducted responsibly, with respect for the dignity and agency of the communities involved. It acknowledges that genetic information belongs primarily to those from whom it is derived and should be studied in ways that benefit rather than potentially harm these communities. As the project progresses, researchers continue to refine our understanding of Basque genetic history. Recent findings have identified distinctive patterns in the distribution of genetic variants across different Basque regions, suggesting that even within this relatively isolated population, local patterns of marriage and movement have created subtle genetic substructure. These patterns correlate interestingly with dialectal boundaries in the Basque language, suggesting that cultural and linguistic factors have influenced genetic structure at very local scales. This observation reinforces the understanding that human genetic patterns are shaped not just by geography and large-scale migration events, but by cultural practices and social boundaries. The story of Basque DNA illustrates a fundamental truth about human evolution and history. We are shaped both by the movements of populations across continents and by the cultural systems we create. The genetic evidence indicates that Basques are not completely distinct from other Europeans. They share most of their genetic heritage with neighboring populations, but the differences that do exist tell a compelling story about how cultural factors can influence genetic patterns. This narrative has broader implications for how we understand human diversity in the modern world. As globalization increases connectivity between previously separated populations, the genetic and cultural distinctiveness that developed through thousands of years of relative isolation is being transformed. Understanding the processes that created this diversity helps us appreciate its value and significance. In a medical research facility in Bilbao in 2025, Dr. Harlan Stein examines results from a study of genetic factors influencing response to certain medications. His team has identified several genetic variants common in the Basque population that affect how individuals metabolize specific drugs. These findings have immediate practical applications, Harlan explains to visiting researchers. By understanding the distinctive genetic profile of this population, we can better tailor medical treatments to individual needs. This is personalized medicine informed by population history. His colleague, Dr. Diana Fletcher, adds, "The Basque case illustrates why genetic diversity matters. Different populations may carry different frequencies of medically relevant genetic variants, which can impact everything from disease susceptibility to treatment response. Studying these differences helps us develop more effective healthcare for everyone." This medical dimension adds urgency to the ongoing research into Basque genetics. Beyond the fascinating historical narrative, this work has potential benefits for human health and well-being. As genetic science continues to advance, our understanding of Basque origins will undoubtedly be refined further. New methodologies for analyzing ancient DNA are continuously being developed, allowing researchers to extract information from increasingly older and more degraded samples. These techniques may eventually allow direct genetic comparison with human remains from the Upper Paleolithic period, potentially resolving long-standing questions about continuity between the earliest human inhabitants of the region and modern Basques. Improvements in computational methods are also enhancing our ability to model complex demographic scenarios using genetic data. These approaches can test competing hypotheses about population history against observed patterns of genetic variation, providing more robust answers to questions about when and how the Basque population became genetically distinct. Another promising area involves the integration of genetic data with detailed archaeological and historical information. By correlating genetic changes with specific archaeological cultures and historical events, researchers can develop more comprehensive narratives about how human populations have evolved and interacted through time. This interdisciplinary approach is already yielding insights. Recent studies combining genetic data with archaeological evidence have identified correlations between changes in material culture and shifts in genetic profiles in many European regions. The Basque country, with its relative genetic stability, provides an interesting contrast to these patterns of change. The study of Basque genetics also connects to broader investigations of human adaptation and evolution. By identifying genetic variants that have been under selection in this population, researchers gain insights into how humans have adapted to specific environments and cultural contexts. For instance, researchers have identified variants in genes involved in fat metabolism that occur at higher frequencies in the Basque population than in neighboring groups. These variants may reflect adaptation to the traditional Basque diet, which historically included substantial amounts of fish and animal fats. Similarly, certain immune system variants appear to have been under selection in the Basque population, potentially reflecting adaptation to local disease pressures. These findings contribute to our understanding of how human populations have evolved in response to changing environments and lifestyles. As we look to the future, research into Basque genetics will likely continue to provide valuable insights into human evolution, migration, and adaptation. The unique history of this population offers a window into processes that have shaped human diversity throughout our species' history. The story of Basque DNA is not merely about one small population in Western Europe. It is about the complex interplay of biological and cultural factors that have shaped all human societies. By understanding how the Basques maintained their distinctive genetic and cultural identity through millennia of European history, we gain insights into the forces that have created human diversity more broadly. This diversity, both genetic and cultural, represents one of humanity's greatest resources. Different populations carry different adaptive genetic variants, cultural knowledge, and perspectives that collectively enhance our species' resilience and creativity. The Basque case illustrates how isolation and continuity can preserve distinctive elements of this diversity, even as gene flow and cultural exchange create connections between populations. As we face global challenges from climate change to emerging diseases, this diversity may prove crucial. Genetic variants that evolved in specific populations may confer resistance to certain diseases or adaptation to particular environmental conditions. Cultural knowledge developed in specific contexts may provide solutions to emerging problems. By studying the processes that created human diversity, we better understand this valuable resource. The mystery of Basque origins reminds us that human history is not a simple, linear narrative. It is a complex tapestry of migrations, isolations, adaptations, and exchanges that has unfolded over thousands of years. The genetic evidence allows us to recover parts of this history that were never written down, providing a deeper understanding of our collective past. For the Basques themselves, this scientific narrative connects with cultural memory and tradition, providing a bridge between modern identity and ancient heritage. The genetic evidence confirms what Basque culture has long asserted, that this population represents a distinctive thread in the European tapestry, with roots stretching deep into prehistory. As we continue to explore the genetic history of the Basque people and other populations around the world, we are gradually reconstructing the story of our species, a story written in the DNA of every human being. Each population contributes a chapter to this global narrative, with the Basques providing one of the most distinctive and enduring accounts of continuity amid change. The enigma of Basque DNA ultimately reveals not just the history of one population, but fundamental truths about how biology and culture interact to shape human societies, reminding us that we are all inheritors of ancient genetic legacies that connect us to the deepest roots of our shared humanity, while celebrating the remarkable diversity that makes each human community unique.